Welcome to episode 161 of the Sports Marketing Machine podcast, powered by Revelocity Sports, the show to help sports teams sell more tickets, sell more merchandise, and grow your fan base. I'm your host, Jeremy Nizer. Today we're talking about connected marketing, what it actually looks like, why so many teams struggle with it, and how getting your systems to work together can create some real revenue opportunities. Because for a lot of teams, the tools are there. They've got ticketing platforms, email software, ad accounts, analytics, fan data. But too often, everything kind of lives in a silo. It's all disconnected. That means unclear reporting, wasted marketing spend, and of course, missed follow-up opportunities, which turns into a whole lot of guessing. So to help break this down, I am joined by Tom Rupp, one of the co-founders of Revelocity Sports. Tom works with teams on connecting the moving pieces, the data, the automation, the audience. Everything together turns into the execution, so marketing becomes smarter, faster, and more measurable. Today, we're just going to unpack what connected marketing actually means, where teams commonly break, and practical ways to improve it no matter your market size or your staff size or the team that you're with, regardless if it's the highest level or a semi-pro, summer collegiate team. Doesn't make a difference. These are some opportunities of ways that you can improve. Let's get going. Tom Rupp, welcome to the podcast. Excited to have you. Excited to talk all things marketing and spend some time digging into the weeds, as we say.
Oh yeah, excited to be here. We'll get weedy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, so we're talking about connecting your marketing and what it would look like. I think teams do some things, teams do a lot of things. Some teams don't do anything. So we're going to go through a whole lot of things today. So let's just kind of high level, kind of above the clouds here, big picture. You've worked with a lot of teams. What are you seeing? What's working with their marketing? What isn't? Just kind of high level here. You don't have to go too far down rabbit holes.
Yeah, what's working? I think the teams are very creative. It's one of the blessings that sports have is we throw a party every time we're in town. So the creativity shines through with their marketing. I think the other like the DIY tools like Constant Contact, like Meta ads, Google ads, any teams that leverage those, even if they leverage them in-house, the technology is like, positioned well to let them kind of shine, which is a really good thing to have in their workbook, to be able to, like Meta ads is a great example. If you just fill it with creative and you do a decent job with some of the copy, you can start seeing some results on it, which is really exciting for teams. I think that where they start to get frustrated is teams feel like they're doing good things. They feel like that they're starting to get some momentum behind their marketing, and then they hit a ceiling, and the ceiling's a lot lower than they want. And I think that the biggest piece we see there that they're missing is integration of their tools to get them to talk to one another, automation so that they don't have to be downloading and uploading and pressing buttons to send data here or there, and then visibility into actually what's working in the tools. And I mean, everybody knows Meta's going to take as much credit for Meta as it possibly can. Google Ads is going to do the same thing. Display ads, if you look at the sum of the return on investment that they give you, you're going to be like, where's that on my books? That's like 3 times what I made last year. So that's where they start to feel that ceiling, I think.
Yeah, and I've mentioned that in a couple times in podcast episodes where Meta's going to tell you one thing, Awarity's going to tell you one thing, Google's going to tell you one thing. Everybody raises their hands because they're in the business to keep you spending more money with them. So why is it so hard if you have all of these different platforms? Obviously, this is one of the reasons, but why else do you think is it so hard to see visibility of what's actually working and what are you wasting money on?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I think, like you mentioned, the platforms are designed to get you to spend money, and if they can show you results none of the results are untrue, but siloed marketing, the parts don't perform as well as the whole or the sum of its parts. Like when you put them together, they really start striking chords with people and singing. If you have them siloed, you're spending a lot of money and you're not feeling like you're able to break through that ceiling you want. And so I think that the technology has limitations if you're not connecting it. And then I think that the difference between close to good and good, that last little bit is actually maybe the most important part. So it's like, our Google Analytics is set up. It's set up pretty well. Like we've got it set up pretty well. And it's like, but that last bit, that's actually all that matters. Mm-hmm. So you look at it and you're like, it's set up pretty well, but I have no idea where anybody's coming from that spends money. It's like, well, that's kind of the whole point of Google Analytics. So that final mile is extremely technically complex to implement. And the trouble is teams often have high turnover. It's a consequence of the industry. And even if you didn't, like you're going to ask somebody to figure this out and do it once and then never do it again. It's kind of a big ask with all the other responsibilities they have,
Yeah, that's for sure. And then in many cases, you're like, I'm going to go pop over to YouTube and try to figure this out. And like 12 hours later, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing.
I know. But AI's been a great solution there because you can go and say, hey, I need to do this. The trick is, though, to get it to actually tell you how to do it and not just like kind of make up a process for how to do it. So even that you have to be pretty good at,
Yeah. So let's kind of do some quick walkthroughs here where things are kind of breaking. I'm going to run through a few areas. Yeah. You react where teams, you see them struggle. So let's talk about systems. Yeah. How often are ticketing, email, paid media, they're actually connected?
Yeah. Actually connected to me means they're integrated, they're automated, and you have visibility into the data flows. And if that's the rubric, almost never. There are a few teams that do this pretty well, and maybe they overpay for it, I don't know. But there are only a few teams that do this pretty well. I think when it is connected, it's manual. You see people like downloading and uploading, or they're paying for some integration that they still have to go click and push. Stellar Algo's done a lot of good work to help teams integrate and even automate some of their data. But even then, like they can only do so much. They provide the data, and then you have to get the teams to actually use it. And that's, I think, where visibility usually in this context means the data flow. Mm-hmm. But it also means like if you've invested time to connect the data and you're not actually using it, if a tree falls and nobody's around to hear it, doesn't really make a sound. Is it actually working? Did you actually even do it?
Yep. Yeah, I just did all this work to get all these good buyers, but am I doing anything to market to them to get them to come to a game, right? So, yeah. Attribution is the next topic here. Do teams really know where sales are coming from? And there's a clear argument around attribution, so this is one I'm going to tiptoe around.
I love this question. As a marketer, it's been one of the passions in my career to help marketers frame up for leadership how marketing impacts the bottom line with clarity and data. Mm-hmm. It's the hardest thing that marketers do when somebody says, did it actually work? Did it actually matter? You have a really hard time answering it. So this is a question I love to get actually. And I think the big challenge is attribution's broken with all the privacy laws and the changes in data and stuff. It's really hard. It used to be easy to just place pixels everywhere and see some of this stuff. Now it's really hard. And the really important thing is multi-touch attribution, which nobody's doing. And if you're not familiar with the term, it's kind of a fancy way of saying what credit did each channel get for a single purchase. Mm-hmm. And it's more about generating awareness to keep yourself top of mind and then hitting them at the right time, the right place with the message that makes them go, I've been wanting to go to a game this year, and then they click and buy. So half the time when that happens, they go to Google and they type in, the
XYZ tickets.
The Cincinnati Revs, Revelocity, and they say, hey, I want tickets, and then they buy tickets. So you probably touched them 20 times with pieces of marketing all across your marketing scheme. And if you look at Google Analytics 4, if it's set up right, it's going to say that you got their purchase because they Googled you organically, and then you've got a GM saying, cut all the budget. Mm-hmm. But we actually touched them 20 times. There were 20 different touch points that made them purchase. So that's a really hard thing. Most teams don't have it set up well. It's one of our missions to help teams figure that out,
What do you tell teams that simply want to report on impressions? Now, impressions are important. It's kind of like the M&Ms in the aisle. When you're walking past them, eventually you're going to buy them, right? But you have to see them 20 times. So impressions are important, but teams that rely heavily on saying impressions are it, like, what do you tell teams there?
Well, I would first ask them how their latest meeting with leadership went, because it probably didn't go well. And they're probably grasping at straws to figure out how to make it better. And this is kind of what I was referring to earlier when it's like we're trying to help marketing teams frame up the specific impact on the team's bottom line with data. So like if you could wave a magic wand to solve that problem, you're a marketer at a team, you'd probably say, man, I'd love for somebody to show me beyond any doubt the money that each of these platforms helped us make, and where we would be in a couple years if we cut the budget to them. And that's I think part of the growth. I mean, there are a lot of teams that weren't even doing digital that have impressions now, and I think that that's a really great metric to start to grow into. But then you start to hit the ceiling. I think that's the challenge that people have is they've started spending money, they kind of felt the results, but now they're getting questions like, yeah, but where's the next plateau that we're going to get? Where's the next ceiling we're going to break through? And you're saying, well, here are these impressions. Somebody's like, impressions, what does that mean? So I think it's part of growth, actually. I don't think it's inherently a good or a bad thing. I think that where we all want to be is have a lot more specificity around the impact that marketing has on the bottom line. And then we can treat impressions and clicks as diagnostic metrics. Something went wrong. Let's look there first to see if we can figure out what's going wrong.
Yeah, and I think that next level leads into this next question perfectly, audience and messaging. I think there's something to be said about tailoring and personalizing messaging.
This is, if you go to anybody in sports who is a marketer or even is close to marketing, a lot of GMs know this really well too, and you say, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could get rid of the email newsletter and only send communication to people that included the experiences they would love at the arena or at the ballpark. They'd be like, man, that's my dream. I would love to get there. I know it's possible. Because I consume it. I turn on Netflix and the whole thing's tailored for me. If I go to a friend's house and turn on Netflix, I'm like, I didn't know this movie was on here. What does your Netflix look? Why does it look like that? So it's part of our everyday experience as consumers. But I think it's a really hard thing for teams to do. They're usually blasting the same thing. Their email databases are usually out of date. I would say the exception would be paid media, especially the paid social, because teams, I think, do understand pretty well, like Meta, TikTok, other paid social platforms do a really good job of matching users with creative, with experiences that they'll love. And I think that it becomes part of the plan to say, well, instead of trying to put a bunch of content on one ad, let's just put one piece of content on 10 ads and throw it to Meta and let the robots figure out how to deliver it. So I actually think that they do a really good job there. The growth piece then is, okay, how do you get all this connected? Like optimizing emails with a robot, that's something that we haven't done yet, Yeah,
and I do see that inside of Meta specifically, they now say, okay, you dump in your creative, and they're like, here, would you like AI to make 62 versions of it? And it's like, so why do they do that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that the creative variations are really important because, in our daily lives, like I say, we're getting. I mean, I was in Kroger the other day, and all of the prices are digital now. And they're talking about my phone being the thing that determines what price I'm going to pay, that I get a discount if I've enrolled in this or that, and like the price updates when I walk through. That's crazy. And so I think that Meta is realizing that little tiny nuances and nuanced changes in creative can actually make a big difference when you're marketing to large numbers. Even small markets are going to have, 50, 100, 200,000 people, and each one of those people lives their lives in a unique way. And so figuring out how to resonate with them with all of these different pieces of creative, I think that's a challenging thing. And like Meta's showing great results. This is kind of a challenge for us because then you have a team that sees something that got put out and they're like, why does it look like this? Like, oh, we can turn that off. Meta's just trying to do a good job. They actually get better results from it, believe it or not. So that's why they're doing that.
Yeah, and it is interesting because oftentimes teams have a graphic person, either internally or externally, that puts their creative and it's on brand, and then all of a sudden they see this Meta ad and they're like, this doesn't look on brand. but it converts. So then you're just like, this is an argument between creative and brand, right?
I know, yeah, and I think that what Meta in particular is really an interesting use case. I know I've talked a lot about them. They're kind of I would say that they're the beasts in the industry still, although we see really great results on other platforms too. But Meta in particular implemented, and you probably heard this, the Andromeda update that kind of revamped their algorithm and how they connect users with the products and experiences they'll love. And what it really does is it uses creative as the foundation to try to trigger a buying event or a conversion event from the customer. And so, hey, what can we connect them with in terms of creative that will get them to buy? And I think that Andromeda is overwhelming teams that are at that level of sophistication where they're ready to grow, and they're saying, what's it going to take to do it? And they're seeing like, whoa, I need 4 or more creative variations per ad, and I need to refresh all of those at least on a monthly basis. That's, I mean,
overwhelming.
We're putting on a lot. I mean, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. You know, depending on your league and how many games you have, even if you're a league with a fewer number of games, that's going to be a lot of creative that you're going to have to produce.
Yeah. Let's talk.
Hard work.
Yeah, you're right about that. And you're relying on the graphic person who is oftentimes kind of pumping stuff out for social media, doing the program, doing things for the website. They're just constantly staring at Canva and Photoshop
Video
all day
board.
long. Video stuff. Yeah, exactly. All of it, right, for sure. So, yeah, you're just stretched too thin for what kind of is the expectation on Meta, for sure.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about where teams may fall in from a bucket here perspective. So crawl, walk, run. What does crawl really look like for teams today? Just having things connected, just looking in that bucket.
Yeah, I think that if you're ready to crawl, you are probably putting calendar reminders in your calendar or somebody else's calendar, and you're saying, hey, I want to manually sync data from the ticket platform into my marketing platforms once a week or once a month or sometime regularly. Like, I want to be able to go into my email platform on a regular basis and know just about everybody who came this year is going to be in there, plus all the people who've historically been in there. And then I think that the other really critical piece is making sure that your conversion pixel, you know, like, this is like such a brand buzzword, I almost hate saying it, but like, you have to make sure your conversion pixels are placed at the points of conversion. It sounds a little silly to say, but the number of teams you go and talk to and say, hey, did you know that your meta pixel's not placed on your ticketing site? And they're like, well, does that matter? And I'm like, well, yeah, that's where people buy. That's what you're trying to get them to do.
Correct. Yeah.
They're like, oh my gosh, of course I knew that. How did I not do that? Well, it's because you're pulling tarp or fixing the ice or doing, it's like, you know.
Yep.
So
yeah.
So I'd say that's crawl.
So crawl is exporting and importing and scheduling those things and setting up, having the pixel on your website, but not necessarily on the ticketing software, which the ticketing softwares that don't allow teams to put pixels on their website, that's a huge red flag. So if you are debating changing a ticketing software, that would be a huge red flag, because that having it on there definitely enhances the opportunity for you to sell more tickets.
I think it enhances visibility and optimization. I think visibility, teams are on average missing out on probably, I mean, if they place the pixel properly and they get offline conversion data, like their ticketing data to sync into the platform, they are probably going to see between 10 and 20 times more purchases attributed to that platform. It's an unbelievable amount that they're missing out on. And then from the optimization standpoint, it's kind of on a team-by-team basis, a league-by-league basis, product-by-product, but my best guess is it's between 25 and 40% over a period of time that they're probably going to miss out on in terms of performance. And I mean, these are not small numbers. It's not like you're getting every single person in your arena or stadium to come because of these ads, but if you can increase the performance by 25%, I mean, that could make your year. So that's a really critical thing.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, if you, you got $10, you put it in there, and then you turn around and you get an extra $250 on top of whatever your return was. Like, absolutely, that's great. Super simple.
I would say that's the best casino you've ever been to. If you can put in $1 and turn it into $250 every time, you know,
nothing wrong with that.
Take out a second mortgage. Yeah, that's right.
That's right. All right, let's talk about the walk bucket here. I feel like a lot of teams are in this area where they're doing a lot of these activities and they're trying to get things going.
Yeah. I think this is where, so I think that the crawl bucket, the best way with some of the buzzwords I've described, or my mantra, I guess, they're not really buzzwords, they're like Thomisms, that's the first level of integration where you're starting to connect data from your data sources, your ticketing platform, whatever else, to your destinations, your marketing destinations like Meta, et cetera. And then the walk, I think, is more integration, but also automation. If you can start introducing some automation, figure out a focused number of audiences and data syncs between your ticketing and marketing platforms. You don't even have to get the platforms to talk to each other yet. Just get your data to talk to them. I think that that's a really big growth step. I think another growth step is some simple creative variations. We see teams now shifting from like, hey, every creative kind of has to be unique to, well, what if I made this creative in a way that I can swap out an image and make 4 different creatives out of the same creative? So I can show, a picture of a beer in the bucket. I can show a picture of, a guy holding it. I can show a picture of the stadium. I can show a picture of a younger, older person, whatever. And now you've got, your dollar beer night ads are suddenly resonating with more people because they can kind of see themselves in the ad. And then I think the last thing in that bucket is probably getting, and this is a hard one, getting Google Analytics 4 set up to baseline. And that's a hard, arduous thing. You've heard a lot of teams say, oh yeah, we tried to do that a couple years ago and we just never could get it to work. It's important because it's really one of the few ways we have to bring all of the platforms together in their reporting and start to decide for ourselves what good looks like.
You mentioned earlier kind of connecting things with the data. Does that mean, I'm going to throw some examples here just for clarity's sake, is that meaning like I'm going to take all my single game buyers and I'm putting it into Meta and I'm targeting those? Or I've got the Meta pixel and I'm retargeting website visitors, or I'm like I've got extra audiences. Is that what you mean in that regard?
I think that's exactly, I actually think it's 2 things. So I think the first thing is Meta is changing creative to try to produce an outcome. The outcome that most teams want is a purchase. But if you think about like group sales, they want a form fill. So Meta doesn't even really care what the event is. They just need to know what it is. And then they need to know the variables that they can change to get the outcome. And so being able to give it more data to make those outcomes happen is important. That's the creative side. And then being able to show more outcomes. So if you could figure out ways, which we see a lot of teams, work with a lot of teams do this, if you figure out ways to take their ticketing data and put it into Meta, so now all of a sudden Meta's not only looking at your website as a purchase point, but your box office as a purchase point. And if you're getting somebody to buy with a phone number or an email, it can say, oh, that's interesting. If I show a person who matches this criteria, this ad, I actually get them to walk up in person and buy a ticket. I'm going to do more of that. So now it has more data. On the other side of it are audiences. So that's like, hey, give it more data, let it optimize, give yourself visibility. And then I think on the audience building and connecting fans with experiences they'll love, putting those audiences into Meta is really important because if you think about it, if you've got a campaign to sell a season ticket, you should probably not be putting that creative in front of your current season ticket holders.
Yep.
Or if you've got a campaign to try to upsell somebody from a 6-game mini plan to a 10-game mini plan, you should take out all of your current 10-game mini plan holders and you should make sure you take all of your 6-game mini plan holders and give it to Meta to seed that audience. And so, you could start to see a lot of really cool things that we'd love to do with inclusions, exclusions, and Meta with those audiences to like supercharge it.
Yeah, I sat down with the team earlier this week, and the exclusion lists of removing season ticket orders as you're promoting season ticket orders, it was an aha moment, like, whoa, I can do this? And it's like there's a difference between the marketing director and the person who's directing the marketing. And I think oftentimes if you I just switch words around, but in reality, like if you put yourself in the chair of directing things and understanding it, that means like things are moving in the background a whole lot easier, and your life is so much easier because you can focus on the strategy side. And I think that's what we're trying to get to here with the run bucket is once you've got things connected in the background, you are directing your marketing.
Yeah. You're no longer the doer and you're now the director. Like how cool would that be if your title actually matched what you did? And we know like it never will because you're always going to be, running around and taking tickets sometimes, doing this and that.
Rolling hot dogs. I've been there.
Exactly. I think it looks like the dreams that everybody has for integration, automation, visibility, and then innovation is what comes next. So I think that run is like you get to that boiling point of having, all of your stuff connected, coming back, talking to each other, audiences firing off here and there. You've got campaigns instead of just single fires. So your first known attendees are getting an email like during the game. Wouldn't that be amazing? And then depending on their answers to a survey, they get different emails. They get 5 emails in a sequence. If they never answer, they start getting like nurture emails once a month. This is stuff where people, we've got all the sports marketers like salivating right now.
That is definitely aspirational for sure.
Yeah. But I mean, your dreams are getting closer because, the technology exists to start putting some of this stuff together. And I think that the innovative part is where once you hit that boiling point baseline, now you start to raise the temperature on stuff that you really did only dream of, and you're able to start going and conquering those mountains, like the first known attendee campaigns, or really cool SMS campaign that makes them feel like they're talking to the GM or something like that. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff that run. It doesn't stop with run.
Sure.
You get to that point and it unlocks all of these
all this other stuff
that you can go to.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it unlocks stuff like that, I think 2 things happen. Number 2, you start thinking differently about how you're doing things, and you can strategize and you're ahead. So it's not a fire drill. But the other thing too, internally as a marketing director, you gain more confidence. Confidence comes from having some sort of success, and you feel like you got your arms wrapped around things.
Yeah.
I think specifically for sports, when you feel confident, you're going to stick around.
That's right. Yeah, I definitely think that's true. I think, any general manager, the average general manager anyway, if you don't think this, you've been very blessed, and I think you probably know it. They know that turnover is a huge issue. And I think that there's 2 ways to fight that. And the first is by crawling, walking, running, integrating, automating, creating visibility. With all that comes documentation, playbooks. AI is making this easier than ever. You turn on your screen recorder and it creates a step-by-step with screenshots. Super cool. That's one way to insulate. But the better way is keeping your team on your staff. And it kind of unlocks 2 things. Like you said, Jeremy, as a marketer, you feel like you're growing, you're excited about what you're doing. But as a manager, you're also not having to be as involved in this stuff. You're having more revenue come through. You feel like you have, you just loosen your collar. You got a little bit more breathing room now. Now you can actually have time to do what you've wanted to do, develop your staff, and make it a nice place to work, and include excitement for your team in addition to the excitement that you're bringing to your fans and your community. It's a huge, huge deal to get to that level, I think.
Yeah, no doubt about that. All right, let's talk about some real world insight. Do you have an example of some teams that maybe thought something was working, and then we looked underneath the hood, and actually that wasn't, or what have you? That may fall into the, hey, this is how we fix this, and then we're going to talk about somewhere when you turn this stuff on, what actually happens. So 2 options there.
That's great. I think there are 2 pieces of low-hanging fruit here that are both related. So I'll just crush them into one thing. I'd say conversion pixels not being on the ticketing site is a big problem. And the other side of that is relying too much on impressions and clicks. And I mean, I say this this is a hard thing to talk to your vendor partners about, especially because so many teams have community-rooted vendor partners, and they're really great folks, and they're stewards of the same community that you're a steward of. But if they're only providing you impressions and clicks, if you're only seeing impressions and clicks in the tools that you run, that is going to be a very difficult thing to pinpoint. It's going to be difficult to pinpoint its impact on the bottom line for the company. And so you got to get beyond that. And an easy way with your conversion pixels is making sure they're placed on the at the purchase point. And then you have to make sure that it's configured correctly, because we see a lot of times teams at minimum, all teams at minimum, have usually three web properties: their shop, their main site, and their ticketing site. Anytime you're bringing people to one site, one domain, and having them transition to another, that transition is a point of risk to lose all of your digital tracking. And then when you go and you look to see what happened, all you see is a referral from one site to the other, and it doesn't actually tell you anything meaningful about where they got how they got there and what made them convert. So I think that's one thing that I think teams kind of see some return on investment. They see impressions, they see clicks, and they're like, oh, this is working. They kind of feel it, but then they get to that ceiling where they want to grow beyond that, and it's really hard because they don't have the conversion data.
Yeah, absolutely. Once they start getting the conversion data, do you feel like that unlocks some things for them to start thinking about, wow, this is working, I'm going to pour more money into this, or they can start making different decisions at this point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the dream, is to get an idea of what value a fan brings to your organization during their lifetime as a fan, and how much it costs to acquire them, and what value every website visitor brings to you. Because if you do some simple division, if you can stabilize that number and say every website visitor brings me $3, not all of them convert, but I do a little division and I say if I bring this many people to the website, enough of them will convert that every visit's worth $5.
Sure.
Then I'm able to go and be like, now I just need to pump as much money into the platforms that are causing this behavior as possible until I start seeing that number dip below my level of tolerance. It might even dip a little low and you're like, hey, I'm okay sacrificing the volume or sacrificing the dollar value for more volume, because like 4 times a million is bigger than 5 times 100,000,
Sure.
And so I definitely think that once you start getting visibility that way in your visibility, there it is again, in your platforms, you're able to start saying, you feel a lot better about spending more money. I think most teams have money to spend. They just need to know that they're getting the value out of it,
Yeah, and as I talk to teams, they don't necessarily always think about the sales funnel. Fill in the top of the funnel, cold audience, warm at the bottom. I think when you start getting things connected, you can start thinking that way and be very strategic of where your marketing dollars go. And okay, I've got website visitors that did X. I got these folks who did Y. You can become a ninja. I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that unlocks new challenges. Like, not all data is useful data for the here and now. And so, that's where another growth phase where you're like, I've got all this connected, now I've got to figure out what actually matters. And goes back to some of the old questions that teams are asking themselves right now.
Yeah, so if a team could fix one thing, if they look at this, they hear this podcast episode, Tom, and they say, okay, I'm going to fix one thing. What is the one thing they should fix?
I am going to give a two-parter. I'm going to take whatever you'll give me. So I'm going to give a two-parter here. If they could fix one thing that's like hard to do, that they're going to need to focus time and energy on, I would say that they really should focus on shifting to measurable personalization. So that's like across their emails, across their meta, across everything. Make sure that your messages are resonating with individual users, and then the way that you need to do that is by understanding where your buyers are coming from. And it's not good enough to just have a pixel place. You have to have the pixel place, and you have to connect all of your ticketing data into those platforms. That's a hard thing. The easy thing, like if I said, hey, you need to pick up the phone after this call, and you need to call the people who are responsible for this, and you need to have them make sure your pixels are placed on your ticketing and shop sites. You need to make sure you're using UTM codes, which we haven't talked about, but I think everybody has some familiarity with them. If you're sending emails and you're not including UTM codes, it sucks to do if your email platform doesn't do it for you. But if you're sending emails without UTM codes, you're not tracking the performance of your emails and your Google Analytics, and it's just a black box. Like emails, sure they work, but like how well do they work? Is it worth us breaking these out into specific audiences? Those are questions you need to be able to answer, because like 3 audiences might be doable, but 10 might not be, until you see, hey, we get way more out of 10. And so, you got to be able to see that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So main takeaways: make sure your ticketing software, your Shopify store, and your website, all 3 have your metapixel. If at the very least you get that, you're ahead of most teams, truth be told.
Oh, yeah.
And then the next step would be the personalization, thinking about your fans in different, and we've heard the word avatars and personalizations and ideal customers, ICPs, and like all of those things. Like, think about who your fans are in 3 different buckets. Maybe it's the grandparents who are bringing their kids out. It's the folks who are coming out just for a night on the town, and maybe it's just family. Like, if you just ran with those 3, you're going to be okay too, right?
100%. Yeah. It's actually interesting because I think that teams do personalize. They do. But they personalize, they start with very niche segments. Hey, who came to military appreciation last year? Who came to Bark in the Park last year? Who came to whatever? Instead, so they're doing some personalization, but their default is to blanket everybody with one size fits all, including the people they're doing personalization with, which makes the personalization really not matter that much. And so I'd start broad in those groups that you said, like the older grandparents, the young families, the younger people looking for a night on the town. That covers pretty much everybody in your market.
Yep.
And if you can keep the messages at that level, then you start to double click into those and say, well, who are the this or that group from these, and that's where you start to walk and run.
Love it, love it, love it. Tom, when we talk about a digital audit, and I think oftentimes when you bring up the word audit, immediately your mind goes to the taxes and the paperwork and what have you. But on the digital side, it's very similar. But I think doing a digital audit of everything really gives you an understanding, because you've got like 19 pieces of software here, right? Our motion sensor just died there. Okay, yeah, we're coming back slowly. The audit, we need a better term for it, because the IRS audits you and takes more money. Digital audit audits your stuff and gives you money back. Yep.
Gives you more money and gives you the ability to produce it. I think the first place we look, pixel placement, account configuration, and making sure we're capturing the right events. And so, if your pixel's placed where it needs to be, check, open up the account. Okay, so Google Analytics 4, big word, has a thing called cross-domain linking. You should use the same tag across all of your web properties. Make sure that the domains are cross-linked. It gives analytics the ability to track a single user in session from the time they arrive on one of your sites and their movement across all three. And so now you're going to get rid of that, hey, here's referral traffic from teamname.com to the ticketing site. It's going to say, no, this person came from Meta, or this person came from email. So making sure that the accounts are configured properly is a big thing, and then making sure we're capturing the right events. So, I was working with the team the other day, and we went in, and they're capturing purchases, which is good, but they weren't capturing add to cart, they weren't capturing view item, they were kind of capturing session start. But I said, well, this is really interesting. So how many people add an item to their cart, and then don't buy? It's like, well, we just obviously have no way of answering. So it becomes really important to make sure that we're seeing who's adding stuff to a cart and not buying, so that we can it makes you log in. It makes you create an account if you don't have one. Oh man, that's a lot of work.
It's friction.
How many people are going and say, they're seeing that, I'm like, I'm not going to buy a ticket. I'll do it tomorrow. Or I'll go, whatever. And now you lost out on their information, maybe their sale. And then, being able to remarket to them and say, hey, we saw that you added something to your cart. We would love for you to go ahead and continue to buy it. That's a big thing.
Do you feel like that's the surprise moment as you get underneath the hood and you start putting things together, and they're like, this cart abandonment, we had no idea this many people put stuff in the cart that didn't buy anything. We just assume people put it in the cart and buy, right? That's not the case.
I think it's a huge aha moment, especially because we typically define the add to cart moment. I mean, if you think about the typical sports team, you go to teamname.com, you click on the schedule page, you find the game you want to go to, you open it up, you click buy ticket, now you're on the ticketing site, now you're viewing an item. So that's on the ticketing site, view item, and then you select how many seats you want and where, and then you click next. That's not add to cart like Amazon, where you're searching, you click add to cart, I'll save it for later. That's a very intentional. I mean, you have to click a lot to get there. And then they abandon 70% of the time.
70%
of the time.
Wow.
Yeah. We're seeing between 70 and 75% with a lot of teams, and it's like, it's kind of a lot. Especially you click that many times. What made them stop? And how can we get them to go ahead and buy? And that's freaking some teams out, frankly. And I wish that this wasn't the aha moment, because if it wasn't, it wouldn't be as big of a problem, and then I'd be able to get them to say, oh, the aha moment is figuring out that I get $1 for every person who comes to the website. Now all I need to do is make sure more people come and go through this funnel and things. But that's kind of that growth, walk, run ceiling that we have to break through first, and then have more aha moments along the way. But yeah, that abandoned cart one's big, man.
Yeah, that's huge. So Revelocity does this, and I'm going to put you on the spot here. I don't think we talked about this,
okay.
this mini directional audit, and it kind of gives a high level. Can you talk a little bit about that? I think what I want to do is kind of offer teams, if they're interested, well, there'll be a form on the on this podcast page. Just fill it out, and we'll do this mini audit for you, and it will give you direction of like, hey, this is working, this isn't, what have you. Because if you're hearing all this and you're like, by golly, I want to be like this. This is how we should be. It shouldn't be a fire drill. It shouldn't be these things. Like we can easily create like a mini audit just for them, right?
100%. And I mean, we can actually do this from the outside looking in. You know, I can't go see what your laundry room looks like because I'm outside the windows, you know, trying to figure out what's maybe a bad metaphor, but but you know, from the outside looking in, you can see a lot of stuff about how these tags are configured, and you can see when you have consistent tags from your shop site to your main site to your ticketing site. That's a good thing. And then you can also see whether certain tags are being preserved from moving one site to the next. This is extremely difficult to set up. I keep trying to this freaks teams out a little bit. Like, again, I think we need a better name than audit. And then you see all the problems that are wrong with your technology setup. And this is what we can tell from the outside looking in. I will say we've done this a lot. We've helped a lot of teams set up their analytics environments and their tracking. And I have never seen it work the way that it is intended to work. It always requires intense technical custom configuration, which is, I mean, these tools are prolific. Everybody uses them. So there is clearly something about the schema that we have, where we have a shop site, we have a main site, we have a ticketing site, that makes this really difficult. So I kind of try and tell teams, like, don't be too hard on yourselves. The fact that you've gotten this far is a great thing. And then it's kind of fun for us to be able to go and say, what is the next step? What are these red dots showing? There's some big like so what's about this stuff. You're not able to spend money as efficiently. You're not able to see what's working. But the fun part is we're going to go fix that now. We're going to give you the playbook to go fix it, or we can help you fix it, or we can point you in the direction of somebody who can help you fix it, and start tracking that information really well.
Yeah, so living in the bucket of we being relentlessly helpful, we will do this. I'm going to put a link in the show notes. You click the link, you just fill out the form and say, hey, I just want this mini review, mini audit, and we will completely do it for you for free. It's directionally going to give you a lot of understanding of what's connected, what isn't, and we'll actually tell you what to do next to fix it, like completely free. So I'm going to put a link in the show notes. Just fill that out if you're interested in it, and we'll whip it up, get it on over to you, spend 30 minutes talking through with you with it. And then if you want to take it and never talk to us again, that's okay. But if you are interested and you're curious about it, happy to help. But more importantly, this free review, this free audit just uncovers some things that you probably had no idea about.
I think there hasn't been a team that has not been true for. Even if things are set up correctly, they're like, oh, I didn't know that they were set up correctly. You know, so
love it. So I'll put a link in the show notes for that. But let's kind of land this plane. If I'm a marketing director and I've been listening to this podcast, what's the first thing I should go check or go do? I know calling the ticketing software and saying, hey, can I get a pixel on there is top of the list. But what's the next 1, 2, 3 maybe?
Yeah, I won't hit those again because we've, beat them into craziness already. But I would say that one question I'd ask either of yourself or of somebody that you work with, when was the last time my email database was updated with my ticketing data? Because this is nothing new. This is not an aha moment. Everybody's going to be like, oh, man, I wish Tom hadn't said that because now I have to go check that tomorrow because it's pretty easy to go a whole year and not sync your ticketing database to your email database. That's an important one. I think a question that you should ask yourself, and you should ask yourself frequently, I mean, we ask ourselves this. If I needed to go see marketing performance across all my channels, is there one unified place that I can go to see that? And I'm going to tell you the answer's probably going to be no. It might be kinda. If you're saying, yes, we've got that figured out, then you should fill out that form and talk with us so we can learn a little bit from you because it's an incredible place to be. I think the last thing I'd say is how many, and we talked a little bit about this, how many of my marketing partners, like the vendors that I have in the community or from my trade agreements, how many of them can actually tell me the material impact they have on my business? And if they cannot tell you concisely what the material impact they have on your business is, you need to really, really think about that relationship and what it means to you. And if your instinct is that they're a good partner and you should keep working with them, your instinct's going to override the data most of the time. So then you've got to say, well, how am I going to measure them? Mm-hmm. Because the old ways of measurement are just, I think everybody's kind of feeling that pressure. They're not good enough. So we've got to figure that out.
Yeah.
Those are 3 things. Did you tell me to only do 1 thing?
Yeah, but that's okay. That's all right. It's all good stuff. Well, Tom, it's been an honor and a privilege, and excited to continue to work with you on with this stuff with the teams and helping teams just grow their fan base, sell more tickets, sell more merchandise, so that they can just make a tremendous impact in their community and become the marketing directors that they are working towards and learning, growing, and what have you. So just appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jeremy.
You got it. We had to stop there.